Zoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well in the free Odyssey app. And you can watch us, if you like, on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see next to me on the screen, Mr. Ben Solak from ESPN. And Ben, if I had told you, let's say in, I don't know, mid-June-ish, sometime in that range of the offseason, maybe even August, if I had been like, hey, about week 5, week 6, I'm going to text you and be like, hey, you want to come on the show? And you're going to be like, heck yeah, I want to talk about the Washington Commanders. This is one of the most fun teams that I could talk about right now. What kind of drugs do you think I would have been on?
I would have said heck yeah, because Craig Hoffman was asking me to come on the show. Right? It's more about the host and the pals than it is about the. In all seriousness, it is, right? It's a pleasant radio host to talk to, or is this an unpleasant experience? But it is a lot more fun to talk about the Commanders than I thought it would be. Absolutely, yes.
I know the offense is obviously the main driver of the fun. So let's start off with there. But I do want to talk about this defense and how they've turned things around from a pretty bad start, one of the worst TVOAs ever through the first couple weeks of the season, to being really good, even though it's been against some questionable, too, in the Cleveland's case, historically bad offenses the last couple of weeks. But Kliff Kingsbury is doing some things that I think people didn't necessarily expect. And I also think the thing that I'm curious to talk to you about, because you study this stuff from the X's and O's level, you talk to coaches, and I feel like when I listen to you, you have certain things that you really believe about football in a way that I appreciate. Like you have a philosophy. How is Kliff accomplishing some of the things that fit the philosophy, maybe in different ways than other coaches have gone about it successfully in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so Kliff is a college coach who came up to the NFL, and it is important to understand that DNA, because there's stuff that NFL coaches, guys who've been in the incubator for 2 decades, 3 decades, are not willing to do that Kliff is willing to do. Right. And we see this whenever a college coach comes. You think about the Chip Kelly era and kind of that, the way that spread system worked and that no huddle worked. Like Kliff's running more bubble screens, more throws behind line of scrimmage than any other team in the league. Jane Daniels is scrambling more than any other quarterback in the league. They're running hurry up, no huddle more than any other team in the league. They're running RPOs, which RPO charting like kind of sucks. But from my eye, they're running RPOs more than anybody else in the league. Right. NFL coaches aren't willing to do this as much because it's simple and it's kind of, it can get solved on the chalkboard and it doesn't actually give your quarterback progressions. And so if the defense is in the right alignment, then you're kind of screwed and you can't get to like a backside this. And like, there's a big philosophical debate about like, can you be doing this? Should you be doing this? How long does this last? And, Kliff was the head coach in Arizona for 4 years. And he had some really nice stretches on offense. And then usually the Jenga tower came tumbling down at some point, right? So it is objectively very hard to be a college-inspired coach, right? And I know like Cam Taylor-Britt said, it's a college offense. And we had to do a whole college offense a pejorative thing for like a week. It just is. Like there's no value statement for me on that. Like as an Eagles fan, I love the Chip Kelly era. As a fan of football, I love like RPOs and quarterback read option stuff getting involved in the NFL. But it is objectively a college offense. Like that's Kliff's background. That's the inspiration. So how long can Kliff make this last? Well, that depends on like his ability to innovate and his ability to stay ahead of opposing defensive coordinators. This year, they're doing more pro-style-y stuff. I use that term like very, very loosely because again, like college has this pejorative and pro doesn't. But they're like running more condensed formations. They're not nearly as spread out as they used to be in Arizona. If you look at like general formation width, they're doing a lot less like 4 open, 4 wide stuff. Like, Kliff's an air raid guy. Well, they're not doing as many air raid formations as they used to. Like, the 4 wide stuff with no tight ends to back in the core of the formation. No, they're running multiple tight ends at a higher rate than he ever did at Arizona. Their formations are generally tighter. It allows them to be a lot more variable in the running game, right? So Kliff's absolutely like evolving, and he's starting to graft more and more pro style stuff into what they're doing, into what the base of this offense is, which again, the base is a college offense. How long does that last? How is that sustainable? Is this going to work in the NFL the way that we typically haven't seen college offenses work? Ask me in 3 months and I'll let you know,
Right. If you were a defensive coordinator trying to put the clamps on it, though, because that's the thing right now. And I was talking to a player in the locker room after the Cleveland game, and he was just like, we're kind of doing everything well right now. It's like the screen game is good. The running game is good. The deep passing game is good. When they do go and drop back, like it's been good. So the fact that they are doing everything well, that if you dedicate resources one place, they have the counters available to them. Right. Is that any different than the good stretches that he had in Arizona that teams were eventually able to figure out? Is this something that only works if the quarterback stays on a hot streak forever? Yeah. Or is there something that is more sustainable that comes out of the way they're using formations, the way they're using personnel, that insulates it a little bit more than some of the problems he ran into later in seasons in Arizona.
Yeah, so this Cleveland game I think is a really good example because they put 34 points on the board, right? Now, if you look from a success rate perspective, right, just in terms of like generally how did the offense perform, one of their worst outings of the season. Not a good outing. I think it was 38.5% success rate or something like that. I might be wrong on that number.
Yeah. And just so the audience knows, success rate isn't a subjective thing. It's an objective stat that says based off the down and distance, did you reach a certain threshold that the people who created the stat said this is a successful play on said down and distance.
Yeah, the typical way it gets defined is, right, like 5 yards on 1st and 10, right? Half of the yards on 2nd down, right? All of the yards on 3rd down. It's kind of basically saying, hey, an 8-yard gain is a lot more valuable on 3rd and 7 than it is on 3rd and 16, right? It's pretty much what we're trying to say. Right. And that's because, right, they had all these big explosives, a huge Jaden Daniels scramble, huge De'Ami Brown touchdown, huge Terry McLaurin catch, peppered inside a game that was a lot of run for 1 yards, run for -1 yards, right? But tag line line of scrimmage, right? Quick throw to Zach Ertz that gets dropped or broken up or whatever. And I think you saw Cleveland have that success because Cleveland was willing to play extremely fast and up near the line of scrimmage, right? And that's something that Cleveland personnel-wise is built to do. In the running game, that allows you to, we're going to shoot some gaps, right? This team wants to pull 6 guys and everything. I have Austin Eckler going this way and 2 tight ends going that way and Jay running this way. Okay, we're just going to blitz it, right? We're just going to go really fast to the mesh point. We're going to try to screw with the timing of all this and just be very disruptive. That gives up some big runs. Think about Austin Eckler, a big, long, explosive run, but it also gets some tackles at or behind line of scrimmage, which is big for a defense. And then passing game wise, what that allows you to do, right, is you're very tight to Zach Ertz, you're very tight to Luke McCaffrey, you're really challenging some of these underneath throws, you're getting incompletions, you're forcing 2nd and 10s. The cost of doing business is, talk about the explosive runs, talk about the isolation throw to De'Ami Brown, you're going to leave yourself in some one-on-ones. As long as Jaden continues to be like really one of the best vertical throwers we've seen through 5 weeks of the season, they're going to continue to be able to score fast and score explosives. It might be herky-jerky the way it was against the Browns. We have some 3-and-out drives. Some drives are going backwards, all of a sudden 60-yard gain. But as long as Jaden can drop that ball in a bucket to De'Ami, unbelievable throw to Terry on the moves. Best throw I've ever seen from Jaden, college or pro. As long as we continue doing that, like they're going to be able to at least put explosives on the board, score fast, and like keep pace with top teams. I'd be concerned about the down-to-down success, right? The kind of the in-structure success of the offense, if they continue to struggle with these defenses that are willing to get really tight to the line of scrimmage and kind of shove it in their face a little bit, right? Get aggressive, kind of blitz the mesh point and try to get some tackles for loss.
Right. But in a league that's built on explosives, if you're going to expose yourself to explosives against Jaden Daniels, it seems like that is... Yeah, that you're like the best option is to play with fire and hope you don't get burned, and that's not exactly sound parenting advice, if you will. Ben Solak, ESPN, with us here on the Hoffman Show. The other thing I wanted to ask you about real quick is someone who's studied quarterbacks like you have, and I think of guys like Stroud, obviously, who had such a fantastic rookie season. The thing that's blown me away about Jaden is how much he's improved week over week. And sometimes it feels like drive over drive, the ability to not make the same mistake twice. Can you remember anybody else or a certain small other group of guys who showed this kind of progression this quickly, fixing what were perceived as holes in their game?
That's a good question. Not really. I think, and I think a huge part of that credit goes to Jaden. I do want to not understate the part of that credit goes to Kliff, right? As I was a guy who was critical of Kliff for a lot of his time in Arizona. I did not like the hire for Washington. I think he's largely making me shut up. But one of the things that Kliff's always had is Kliff is really, really good at getting his quarterback to see it. Right. And he was a quarterback's coach, right? When he was, before he was a head coach at Texas Tech. And then in his time between Arizona and Washington, he was there with Caleb Williams. Kliff's very, very good at getting his quarterback to understand what it is that Kliff wants from this, right? He is a good teacher, a good communicator of, okay, if we get X, do Y, if we get Y, do Z. And then Kliff's also very comfortable telling his quarterback, and if you don't like it, tuck it, run, and like, we'll get to another down. Right. And so I think Kliff is a really good guy to have in Jaden's ear, because I think there's a lot of quarterback coaches and offensive coordinators in the league right now who would see Jaden scrambling as much as Jaden scrambling. And Jaden will tuck and run when there's open receivers downfield and would get like upset about that and want to fix that. And Kliff's just very happy living with that, right? He doesn't mind picking up yardage that way. And so I think Kliff is a big part of why you're seeing Jaden. Yeah, Jaden's eyes are good and he's seeing things fast and he's not replicating the same mistakes, repeating the same mistakes over and over. I think Kliff's a big part of that. And then I also think Jaden's a big part of that. But you ask do guys develop like this? The answer is no. And I think that, one, that's great news because it's awesome. I think also, two, it's kind of bad news because there are some bad Jaden games coming down the stretch. And I don't say that for any other reason besides this is the NFL and it's very hard, right? There's kind of there's two realities right now for Washington fans. One, Jaden's the best rookie quarterback of all time. Or two, there's going to be some bumps in this road, right? And like Unfortunately, one is just remarkably more likely than the other. And so I think you're going to see some games where the interception numbers go up, right? Because the downfield completion numbers go down. This offense gets stuck in the mud a little bit more. The running game doesn't work as well. They have to deal with a lot of third and drop back. They have to deal with some more pass protection the way that this line's been performing well, but I'm not sure it's the best in like drop back pass protection. And they're going to have some bad games. I think it's going to get herky jerky. If you can continue to ride those waves, now we've got a guy who really has his head screwed on straight, can develop well. That's the makings of a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, how he handles that is everything. And that dude, the thing that I think has changed specifically about that position, that like anytime I talk about, and hopefully if I'm here, I won't have to talk about quarterbacks in a draft for 10 years. Right. But the thing that I will look at in future drafts much more is like, I want to know about guys' work habits. I want to know about the mentality and kind of everything up here in a way that I always knew was really important, but just see how he does it. And you're like, oh, I get it now. Like, it's just, there's a prerequisite of like getting there at 4 a.m. that your ceiling or your floor then becomes like Alex Smith, and your ceiling is what we're seeing with Jaden right now when you work like that and your process is good. Defensively, though, they started really poor and have turned things around. And I know that you're impressed by some of the things that they've been able to find. What is it that you see that makes you believe that it's not just, hey, Kyler had a bad day, and when Kyler has a bad day, they're really bad, and Cleveland's one of the worst offenses we've ever seen, that there's actually improvement on the Washington side of it?
I think that, right, they have a few peak players, especially in the front seven. I think like John Allen and Jerron Payne, I think everybody knows about. Frankie Lou has been lights out, dude. Frankie, man, I was worried about the transition out of like, oh, we're a 3-4 team. We have this spot for this like outside linebacker, off-ball linebacker hybrid. Frankie Lou, like that's what he was in Carolina. Go to Washington, it's Dan Quinn, and you're just like, all right, like, so you can be a full-time edge rusher, you can be a full-time off-ball backer. Like, that's never been Frankie's game. I kind of don't know how this is going to work. Frankie's been excellent for them. He's been unbelievable off-ball. Looks delightful. And so, like, those three guys are creating enough splash plays for them that they get opportunities ahead of the sticks to get off of the field, right? Like, Washington's defense is still like absolute last in the league and like explosive run rate surrendered, but they're also like up there in terms of like tackle for loss and stuffs, right? So it's kind of, you're living with a double-edged sword there. It's okay. Sometimes we give up these big runs, we give up these chunk gains, and they're putting points on the board. Sometimes you can get to 2nd and 12. Sometimes you can get to 3rd and 9. And then let's see if we can win that down. I think that the changes at corner have been good for them, right? I don't think Mikey Sanderson is the best outside corner in the league. I don't think that's the best spot for him. I don't think Noah Igbenogany is the best slot corner in the league, but like, I think it's kind of better than some of the guys they had out there previously and the targets that were on their backs, right, in terms of opposing offenses. So I think that's given you a little bit of breathing room. Quan and Chin are playing well, playing fast. They're hitting their big guys, right? And that's like really nice to have in this defense where you're asking those guys to make a lot of tackles in space. So they have enough splash players, especially in the front seven, that they're getting penetration, they're getting stops, they're able to get off the field often enough that this offense can kind of get a lead built because they're scoring on every single freaking drive. And then all of a sudden, the opposing team's in pass, and now you can just rush the passer, Dan Quinn, go crazy. I'm really interested to see what happens in a game for this defense where the script isn't as nice, right? They're not nursing a multi-score lead for the entire second half, which has been the case for most of the Bengals game, all of the Cardinals game, and then all of the Browns game. That's kind of where we've seen the improvement kind of come over the last few weeks. And I think Baltimore is a good test for that, right? Where I think even if this offense is producing well against Baltimore, Baltimore's going to slow the game down, right? Because they're going to run the football a lot. They're going to eat some clock. I don't think you're going to see them, down 17 to the Commanders at halftime. And I think it's going to put more stress on this defense over the course of 4 quarters. So excited to see it.
So let's talk about this Baltimore game real quick. Ben Solak, ESPN, with us. And I think the full range of outcomes is on the table. I would say blowout either way is less likely than close game. If I had to pick one blowout, I'd probably pick Baltimore still. Sorry, Commanders fans. But I pick Baltimore blowing out Washington. They just could play at an intensity that Washington hasn't experienced yet, and Baltimore's playoff tested, et cetera, et cetera. But I do look at the 31st ranked pass defense for Baltimore and go, I don't know, this Washington pass offense pretty darn good. They're the best scoring team in the league so far. So I guess it is possible. What matchup or part phases of the game going against each other do you think is or are the ultimate determinants in the Washington-Baltimore matchup?
Yeah, I think the best thing that Commanders have done through the first 5 weeks has just been really, really good in the handoff game and the read option game, just running the football, right? Stay ahead of the sticks, get you to your RPO game, get you to your play action pass game, and then Jane hits his explosives. The Ravens are a pass funnel defense. They see more dropbacks over expectation than any defense in the league because this run defense is really, really, really good. So the first thing to find out is, okay, where are you going to find your easy buckets on 1st and 10, right? I think it's going to be a lot fewer not a lot, but significantly fewer Brian Robinson runs and Austin Eckler runs, and a lot more Luke McCaffrey screens and Terry McLaurin screens and De'Ami Brown screens, and trying to find ways to just keep the base offense moving, right? Convert the first down and kind of get your sea legs under you. So that tackling game that you're going to have there on the boundary is going to be a big deal. If they can run the football in Baltimore, go for it. It's just nobody really has been able to do that yet. If that puts you, if you're in a bad spot now, if you're facing more third and longs and whatever, it becomes a really important game for the non-Terry McLaurin wide receivers, because Baltimore has just like, they'll leave Brandon Stevens on an island on the outside. Now they have rookie corner Nate Wiggins, who's actually looked pretty good through the first couple of weeks that he's back from injury, but they'll leave him alone on the outside. They'll leave Marlon Humphrey in the slot, and they'll basically just say like, hey, pick your matchup and see if you can beat one of our guys. And like, Stevens is not the strongest guy at the catch point. Wiggins is a rookie. Marlon's pretty good in the slot. But like, this is the sort of game where you'd like to be able to look at De'Ami Brown, look at Olamide Zaccheaus, and say like, hey, you got to go get us a bucket on 3rd and 8. And the Commanders have been very surprisingly good at that. I feel like they're Luke McCaffrey's and De'Ami's of the world. Of the things that I'm suspicious of this Commanders team, that's pretty high up there, where I'm looking at these receivers like, okay, like, there's a 3rd round rookie. This is De'Ami was kind of like viewed as a bust and like not necessarily making room. Olamide Zaccheaus was like a low tier free agent. How are these guys finding so much success right now in the passing game? So it's going to be important for those guys, I think, to win on your late down. So it's an important game for Kliff in terms of scheming up the easy yardage. And then it's going to be a very important game for those alternate receivers, those second receivers, besides Terry, winning their one-on-one matchups. Jaden scrambling is not going to save you in this game, because Baltimore is extremely disciplined on defense against scrambling quarterbacks, right? This team plays Lamar exclusively for like 2 months in the summer, all right? They care very, very deeply about rushing the quarterback intelligently, keeping him in the pocket, right? Don't, like, you saw the Browns fly at Jaden and just like Jaden would just go out the back door, and now there's 3 Browns on the ground. There's so much space downfield. Baltimore's not going to give you that. So Jaden scrambling is not going to save you as much as you want in this game. So you have to be better kind of on script a little bit. That's going to be the matchup there.
And then when you flip the field, can Washington, like, they've been better against the run. They're also very susceptible to very specific runs, some of these traps and whams and pulling, pin pull type of stuff. And Cleveland just didn't run them, which thanks, Kevin Stefanski. Appreciate you for that one. How do you think that they can do enough against Lamar and Henry in the running game to kind of do what Cincinnati tried and make Lamar have back-to-back, like, hey, we'll beat you with big explosive passing play type of games?
Right, yeah. So this Baltimore team has had 38 straight games of rushing for 100 yards. The first team in I want to say, almost 20 years now to have 1,000 rushing yards through the first 5 weeks and average 6 yards per carry. You're not going to stop the running game. What's important is to not let the 10-yard runs become 50-yard runs, specifically with Derrick Henry, right? You can't let him get to that 3rd level and get some steam. Like I said, Quan and Chin are big safeties. Nobody's big when it comes to tackling Derrick Henry when he's got momentum. And so you really have to be able to, kind of batter him and slow him down and gang tackle him there in the 2nd level. Don't let him break to the 3rd level. So firstly, just don't give up the game-winning run that he had against the Bengals. Don't give up the first run that he had against the Bills. You cannot let the choo-choo train get moving in the 3rd level. So if that's what you do in the box, right, you really try just like, you're going to have to live with 5-yard runs, just trying not to let them be 15, 20, 50, 75. And then in the passing game, like, the Ravens have been pretty good this year. Lamar's playing excellent football, throwing the football, but like, 1 week they're a Zay Flowers team, the next week they're an Isaiah Likely team, the following week they're a Justice Hill team. They're kind of very designery in the passing game. They kind of get to one matchup that they like and they try to hammer it as best they can. They're not very versatile. They're not great going through their progressions. It's usually Lamar getting outside of the pocket and then creating the scramble drill. And so you have to figure out where they're going to pressure point you. I think it's going to be a Justice Hill sort of a day, throwing the ball to the back, kind of a lot of this, take advantage of the aggressiveness of that front and then go misdirection and kind of get the ball out early. And so you have to be able to tackle really well in space. You have to be able to adjust to that when you see it on the fly. Like, Monken is usually really good in the first quarter, and then you can catch up to him in the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th. And so it's a big Dan Quinn day for figuring out what's going on.
That's going to be definitely interesting to watch. And then last but not least, and sorry, we're gonna make this a little short because of time here, Ben, but we want people to read the article anyway. You did a proposed trades column for ESPN.com. I believe you had a Commanders proposed trade. What's the short version of that we can send people to the internet to read if they want the long version?
Yeah, well, I think that this team, it's funny, they were the biggest sellers last year because this team was nowhere. The second you get a Jane Daniels in the building, you're like, all right, we have a 4 or 5 year rookie window. Let's go. And you become the biggest buyers in the world, right? Like, in a heartbeat. I have them adding T. Higgins. I think the Bengals are going to be in a spot where they might have to blow it up by the end of this month. And just right now you have no kind of ball winner on the outside. Like, Terry's unbelievable. I love Terry to death, but Terry's like not the biggest guy, not like, win above the rim sort of a dude. And if you add a T. Higgins to this team, like, and you have the ability to play him outside, you get to move Terry into the slot a little bit more. You kind of bump You don't have to ask Olamide and Diami and Noah Brown to do as much they've been doing so far for you this year. I think that this team construction starts to look a lot more viable. And so I have them trading for T. I think they should be on every single, like Devontae talks, they should be there. Amari Cooper talks, they should be there. Just if the price is right, the best guy for them is T. He's a little bit younger, and I think he fits best, but this team should add a receiver for sure.
Yeah, no, it's so tempting. I also am just like, I want to give Adam Peters every draft pick possible to let him just draft dudes. Don't get impatient, but
it's a great idea. It's a lovely idea, but what the clock is ticking already on the rookie window.
On the rookie,
and you know, totally. If you know for sure a guy is good in the NFL, that certainty is very important at this stage in your team building. And so absolutely keep some picks, but you want to spend a second round pick on some guy from Michigan who might be a good pass catcher. You want to spend on T. Higgins? I know what I want to do.
I totally get that line of thinking as well. Ben Solak, you can do his work, ESPN.com, frequent guest on many of the ESPN's podcasts as well. Mina and the whole crew over there. Catch him on TV. He's a big superstar now. Ben, appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.